The forgotten face from Hometh private jet touched down quietly on the airstrip just outside his hometown. Sundar Pichai leaned back in his seat, eyes closed, lost in thoughts. He hadn't been back to India in years, not like this. Not in silence. Not without press conferences or events. This trip was different. His mother had called 3 days ago. She didn't ask for much, but there was something unusual in her voice. She had said only one thing. You need to see her, Beta, before it's too late. Those words had echoed in his head. But she didn't say who. He had assumed an old relative. Maybe an aunt he had forgotten. But deep down, a strange feeling was growing inside him, like the past was waking up as he stepped out of the jet and walked toward the black SUV waiting for him. A sudden gust of wind blew dust across his shoes. He looked around. The air smelled like old memories, street food, incense, and wet soil. The driver opened the door without a word. Sundar climbed in. The roads were narrow, familiar, and full of life. Everything looked smaller now. Or maybe he had just become too big. His phone buzzed, but he didn't look at it. Instead, his eyes were on the people outside, vendors shouting, kids laughing, a woman carrying flowers on her head. He smiled for a second. Then he saw the building. Small, cracked walls. A rusted signboard that once read Animal Helpers. He remembered it now. This was the place. Years ago, when his parents worked long hours, this place sent them help nannies, cooks, caretakers. And one of them. Had raised him like her own. He stepped out of the car. The moment his shoes touched the ground, memories began flooding back. He remembered soft lullabies and a trembling voice. A hand patting his back when he cried. Warm rice fed to him under a mosquito net. He remembered her. She wasn't his real grandmother. Not by blood, not by name. But she had been more than that. He walked up the steps. The front door creaked open before he could knock. A young woman stood there. Her eyes widened in shock. Sir, Sundar Pichai? She's tis me aridit. He nodded gently. I'm here to see Emma. Is she still? His voice broke before he could finish. The girl swallowed. Come in, sir. He followed her into a dim hallway. The walls were lined with photos of nannies and caretakers. Some were young, many were old. Most were forgotten. She led him to the back. The door was half open, and there, inside, under a flickering bulb, sat an old woman in a plain white sari, folding towels. Her hands trembled, her back hunched, but her eyes were the same. They were kind, soft, and full of quiet strength. He stepped in. She didn't look up. Double quotes him. He said softly. She froze. Slowly. She turned her head, and then her eyes widened. She looked at him for a long time, like trying to see a child hidden behind the face of a grown man. Then she smiled, and it was the same smile that used to greet him after school. Chinna? She whispered, using the nickname she had given him. You came back? He knelt down beside her. Why are you still working? You should be resting. You should be with family. She looked away. Family forgets, work doesn't. Those 3 words pierced his heart. He looked around. The room was small. No fan, no window, just piles of laundry, folded by those same hands that had once held him when he had nightmares. How long have you been working here? He asked. 62 years, she said calmly. They said I was too old 10 years ago, but I begged to stay. I don't like empty rooms. He felt a lump in his throat. How could this happen? He was one of the most powerful men in the world. Yet, the woman who raised him, who shaped his heart, had spent her last years alone. Folding sheets. He stood up. Come with me, Alma. You're not staying here. But she didn't move. This is my home now, she said quietly. He didn't understand until the young woman at the door spoke. Sir. She gave up everything for the children she raised. She never married, never had her own. When they grew up, they forgot her. And no one came to take her? The woman shook her head. Not even one. Sundar looked at Amma again. Her hands were shaking now, trying to fold one more towel. He gently took it from her. No more. Folding, Amma, but she shook her head stubbornly. I have work. I have duty. He sat beside her. Your duty is done. You've given enough. Now let me give something back. Her eyes filled with tears, but I have nothing to offer anymore. He smiled softly. You gave me everything, my first alphabet, my first prayer, my first hope. For a moment, the silence was heavy. Then she leaned against his shoulder like she used to when he was small. You still remember? She whispered. I never forgot. His phone buzzed again. He ignored it. For once the world could wait, but just as he stood to take her with him, a man walked into the room. He looked angry, confused. What's going on here? He barked. The young woman stood back. Sir, this is Sundar Pichai. I don't care who he is. She works here. She doesn't have visitors during shift hours. Sundar turned slowly. Who are you? I manage this place. And we have rules. He looked at Amma like she was a number. Not a person. She's going with me, Sundar said. Calmly, she signed a contract. She works here by choice. Sundar's eyes narrowed. Show me. The man pulled out a file from the drawer. Inside was a shaky signature on old paper. She had signed her life away. Sundar took the paper, looked at it closely. Then he looked at her. Did you sign this because you had no place else to go? She didn't answer, but her silence was louder than words. He turned back to the manager. This ends today, not without legal. Then I'll handle it. Legally, Sundar said. But she's not staying here another night. He picked up her small bag. It barely had anything. A photo. Some clothes. An old pair of glasses. He turned to her. Will you come with me, Emma? She looked at him, her hands trembling. She didn't speak. She just nodded slowly. He helped her up gently. Each step was slow, painful, but with every step her spine straightened, her eyes lit up. Like a burden was lifting. As they walked out of the room, the young woman behind them began to cry quietly. Thank you. She whispered. That just as they reached the car, Sundar's phone buzzed again. This time, he looked and froze. The message read, Do not trust her. She's hiding something. He looked at the screen, then at Amma, who was now sitting in the car beside him, silent, peaceful. But something in that message chilled his blood, because the number it came from was unknown. And next message followed seconds later. She's not who you think she is. The message he never expected. The car moved slowly through the city, weaving past narrow lanes and familiar corners. Sundar sat in silence, watching the old woman beside him. Amma rested against the seat, her eyes closed, her breathing steady, almost like she was finally at peace. But the phone in his hand told a different story. The message blinked back at him. Do not trust her. She's hiding something. He hadn't shown her. Not yet. Not when she looked so fragile. Not when her wrinkled hands were still shaking from the sudden change. She was holding a handkerchief now. The same white cotton one she used to wipe his tears when he was 5. He had forgotten it even existed. And yet here it was, folded neatly in her lap like time had never moved. He turned his phone off and slipped it into his pocket. Was it a prank? Was it just noise from someone fishing for attention? Or was there something deeper, something he didn't want to admit to himself? He remembered the way the manager had said it. She signed a contract. The words felt rehearsed, cold, and the way she hadn't defended herself. Why didn't she speak? But then she turned to him and smiled, and for a moment, all doubt faded. They reached his mother's home. The gate creaked open as the security guard nodded, his eyes widening slightly at the sight of Amma. Sundar's mother rushed out the moment the car pulled in. Her face froze when she saw the old woman step out. Amma, she whispered, as if seeing a ghost from her past. Emma smiled, and tears ran down her cheeks. For the next few minutes, there were no words, only hugs, only hands clutched tightly, memories exchanged through silence. Sundar watched them, his chest heavy with emotion. He hadn't seen his mother cry in years. They sat inside later, the 3 of them. The living room was warm, filled with the scent of jasmine and cardamom. Amma looked around. her eyes stopping at the framed photos on the wall. Sundar's graduation, his wedding, even an old newspaper article about his first day as Google's CEO. She paused at one photo. It was faded, torn on the edges. A photo of her with a little boy on her lap. "You kept this?" she asked. His mother nodded. "You were more than just help. You were our strength." But something changed in Amma's face. A shadow passed. Not everyone remembers. She said. The sentence hung in the air like smoke. Later that night, Sundar walked into his room, tired but restless. He picked up his phone again. The message was still there. And then another had come in. "She's not Amma. Check the records from 1984. His heart skipped a beat. What records? He typed the number into a reverse lookup site. No results. Unregistered. Blocked. He opened his old years ago, back when he applied for a scholarship. Buried in a folder labeled personal, he found an old scanned document. It was a photo of him as a child with a woman's name under it. The name wasn't Amma's. His brow furrowed. Her name had always been just Amma to him. He never thought to ask if that was her real name. He realized with growing confusion that he didn't actually know her real name. Not her last name. Not her birth date. Not even her village. How could someone so important be a mystery? He stepped out quietly and walked down the hall. The door to the guest room was slightly open. He peeked in. Amma was awake, sitting on the bed, staring at the wall. "Can't sleep?" he asked softly. She didn't look at him. "Some memories are loud," she said. He sat beside her. Double quotes. Mema. "Can I ask you something?" She turned to him slowly. "You can ask, but some answers hurt." He hesitated. "Was your name always Amma?" She smiled. "No one is born with that name. Someone gives it to you. So, what is your name?" She looked out the window. "Kamala." "Kamala what?" "Just Kamala." He frowned. "You have no surname?" "I left it behind. It didn't serve me." "Where did you come from?" She stood up, walked to the window, and pulled the curtain aside. The moonlight made her silver hair glow. A small village. A river with no name. A house made of mud and pain. He didn't speak. "I came here to forget, to serve, to give. I didn't want a past. I wanted peace. Why didn't you ever tell us?" "You never asked." Her voice was calm, but there was a weight beneath it. Sundar nodded slowly. But inside, his mind was racing. Who was she really? And why had someone messaged him to warn him? The next morning, he visited the municipal records office. His assistant had arranged everything. He told himself it was just for clarity, just to know her full name. Maybe plan her retirement documents, maybe a medical file. But part of him needed answers. He handed over the few details he knew. Years she started at the helper agency, approximate age, the name Kamala, and the nickname Amma. The clerk, an old man with thick glasses, clicked away at the keyboard. He shook his head. No official record under this name in our system before 1991. Sundar leaned in. "What about before that? What about under another name?" "Records from the 1980s are mostly on paper. Some were damaged in the flood of 1993. We have limited files." He pulled out an old register. Only one match for a Kamala who worked with children. "But, sir, there's something strange." "What is it?" The man turned the book toward him. Kamala, female, born 1938, listed as caregiver. Status: missing. Year: 1984. Missing? Yes, sir. Declared missing by family in 1984. Case never solved. Sundar stared at the entry. "Do you have a photo?" "We have one small one." "Let me find it." After 5 minutes, the clerk handed him a grainy photo from an old file. Sundar's hands trembled. It was her, but younger. Standing beside a child. Not him. And then he saw the child in the photo. Wasn't him, but he looked just like him. Almost identical. The boy in the photo had the same eyes, same nose, same expression. "Who is the child?" Sundar asked. The clerk shook his head. "No name listed. Only note says, last seen with Kamala before she disappeared." Sundar left the office in silence. The air outside felt heavy. He looked down at the photo again, and for the first time. He wasn't sure who he was anymore. That night, he sat with his mother. Did Amma ever talk about her life before us? His? Mother looked surprised. No, she was always quiet. We didn't ask, we respected her space. You didn't think it was strange? Back then, people didn't ask questions. She was kind. Devoted. That was enough. He showed her the photo. His mother gasped. This isn't you. He shook his head. And she never told you? No. Sundar stood up. He had to know the truth. He walked to the guest room again. This time, he found her standing at the mirror, brushing her long silver hair. I need you to tell me everything. She paused. You saw the photo? He nodded. Double quotes, then you know. Know what? That you were never the first. A chill ran down his spine. What happened to him? He asked. Her hands lowered the brush. She placed it gently on the table. He was taken from me. At a place like this, on a day like today? Taken how? I trusted someone, and they sold him. Sold? To a rich family? They changed his name, his history, and I never saw him again. Sundar sat down slowly. Do you think that child was me? She looked at him. Tears filled her eyes. For years, I thought so. The first time I saw you, I thought fate had returned to him. But your parents were kind. You were safe. And I stayed. Maybe to feel close to what I had lost. You never told me because I didn't want you to carry my grief. Sundar leaned back, his heart pounding. If she was telling the truth. Was his entire identity a lie? Or was she just a broken woman clinging to shadows? But then his phone buzzed again. A new message. She stole the real child. Ask her what happened in Delhi in 1984. He looked at her. What happened in Delhi in 1984? Her face changed. Just for a second. Fear. Regret. Something dark. And she said only 3 words. I can't remember. The child from Delhi night air was heavy, as if the sky itself was holding its breath. Sundar sat alone on the rooftop terrace. Of his mother's home, the cold steel of his phone pressing into his palm. The latest message echoed through his thoughts like a haunting drumbeat. She stole the real child. Ask her what happened in Delhi in 1984. He stared into the dark sky, looking for answers where none existed. His fingers trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the weight of uncertainty. The woman who had raised him with lullabies and lentils, who had held his hand through fevers and first steps, was now a figure tangled in mystery and contradiction. He heard footsteps, turning. Slowly, he saw his mother approach. She held a small wooden box in her hands, one he hadn't seen in years. I kept this, she said softly. I thought one day you'd want to look. She placed it beside him and sat down. Inside the box were old school certificates, drawings. From kindergarten, tiny baby shoes, and a faded photograph one he hadn't seen before. In the photo, he was an infant, swaddled in a cloth, held not by his mother, but by Amma. This was taken a few weeks after you came to us, his mother said. I remember it clearly. You wouldn't stop crying? We had tried everything. Then she walked into the room, picked you up, and you became silent, like you knew her. Sundar looked at the photo. The way she held him, it wasn't just a caretaker's touch. It was something deeper, something primal, something aching. Did you ever think I wasn't yours? His mother paused, her fingers gently tracing the edge of the photo. No, but there were times you asked about things we never told you, details about places you shouldn't remember. I thought it was imagination. He turned to her, a chill rising in his spine. What if she isn't who she says she is? What if I'm not who I think I am? Her face changed, not with fear, but sorrow. Then we find the truth, no matter what it is. The next morning, Sundar booked a flight to Delhi. He told his team it was personal. No meetings, no cameras. Only answers. He took Amma with him. She said nothing when he told her. Just nodded. Quietly. Almost like she had been waiting for this day for years. On the plane, he watched her. Her eyes were closed, but he knew she wasn't asleep. He wondered what memories lived behind those closed lids. Memories of children lost. Memories of silence and sacrifice. The car met them at the airport and took them straight to the address listed in the municipal record book. It was an old neighborhood in South Delhi, the kind where trees had grown around electric poles, and the walls still held the stains of time. They stopped in front of a crumbling building. The sign above it read Shraddha Children's Shelter, Est, 1979. As they stepped out, Emma hesitated. I haven't been here since that year. She whispered, Do you remember what happened? Sundar asked gently. I remember a scream, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. And then silence. They entered the shelter. The walls were chipped, but clean. A few children ran past them, laughing. A woman greeted them at the desk, her eyes narrowing in recognition. You're Sundar Pichai? He nodded. We're looking for records from 1984, regarding a woman named Kamala. The woman's face tightened. You'll want to speak to Sister Mary. Sister Mary was in her 80s now, a sharp-eyed woman in a pale blue sari who walked with a cane but spoke like thunder. When Sundar introduced himself and mentioned Amma, Sister Mary looked closely at the old woman beside him. Kamala. Amma's eyes welled up. You remember me? I remember the night you vanished. One child disappeared. Another arrived weeks later. We filed a report. No one followed up. Sundar felt his throat tighten. What do you mean, another arrived? A baby boy, Sister Mary said, left at our doorstep, wrapped in an expensive cloth. No, nothing. Alma turned her face away. I tried to return, she whispered. But they wouldn't? Let me in. Because we thought you had stolen a child, Sister Mary said firmly. And you never answered the investigation. Why did you run? Alma gripped the edge of the chair. I didn't run, she said. I was taken, and when I came back, everything was gone. Sister Mary didn't respond. She stood and walked to a cupboard, pulling out an old file. We never destroyed these. We hoped someone would come. She placed the file in front of Sundar. Inside were brittle pages, photographs, and faded notes. One photo showed Amma holding a child. The same child as in the municipal records, not Sundar. Someone else thought another photo showed a baby boy alone sleeping in a basket. The resemblance to Sundar was uncanny. This was the baby left behind. He asked, and he was never claimed? Never. He turned to Emma. Was that me? She was crying now. I don't know, she whispered. When they took my child, they left a baby in his place. I was told he died. But when I saw this child, I felt something. I thought maybe it was a gift, a second chance. So you raised me? I didn't know your name or your past. But I held you, fed you, prayed for you. Sundar looked down at the photo again. A baby, alone, with no name, no history. He was that baby, not stolen, not born, left. He stood up and walked to the window, heart pounding. His entire life had started at a doorstep. Who had left him there. And why? But before he could speak again, a loud knock echoed through the building. A man entered, tall, dressed in black. He showed his badge. We're here for Kamala, he said. Sister Mary stood up sharply. Why? New evidence in the case of child displacement. A reopened investigation from 1984. Sundar stepped forward. I'm with her. The man looked him up and down. Doesn't matter who you are, sir. We need to take her in for questioning. Alma stood slowly. It's time, she said. I'll answer everything. Sundar reached for her hand. You don't have to go alone. Yes, I do, she said. Because only the truth can free. You know, as the officers led her away, Sundar felt a strange emptiness grow inside him. He didn't know what was worse, that he might have been abandoned as a child, or that the only woman who ever loved him might disappear forever. The courtroom of silence at the room was cold, not just from the air conditioning, but from the feeling that surrounded everyone inside it. Sundar sat at the back of the narrow interrogation room in the old Delhi police building, his eyes locked on the glass window ahead. Beyond that pane of one-way glass, Alma sat alone at a steel table. Her hands were folded neatly in her lap, and her eyes were fixed on a small crack in the wall, as if it held all the answers she had never been able to find. He could barely believe what he was seeing. A woman who had once comforted him after nightmares was now being questioned like a criminal, and yet she didn't look angry. She didn't look scared. She looked tired. Tired in a way that no sleep could ever cure. On the other side of the glass, 2 officers entered the room. They were careful, respectful, almost. One of them placed a recorder on the table. The red light blinked. It began. Kamala. Can you confirm your full name for the record? She nodded. Kamala. I have no last name. You were registered? In 1980 with the Shraddha shelter. But in 1984, you disappeared. Can you explain? Her voice was calm. Too calm. I was taken from the shelter, not by force, not with violence. I was offered work. Someone said there was a rich family looking for a nanny. They promised good pay. I believed them. Who was the family? I don't know. I was never told their name. I was blindfolded during the journey. I thought it was a precaution. What happened when you got there? She paused. Her hands tightened slightly. I was brought into a large house. White walls, marble floors. There was a child already there. They said he needed care. The parents were always gone. They paid me in silence, never spoke much. Just instructions. Sundar leaned in closer, heart thudding. Was the child yours? Alma blinked. Slowly. No, but he looked like mine. The same eyes, the same hair. But I knew it wasn't him. Still, I cared for him, loved him as all had. Did you ever try to leave? Many times, but the gates were locked. I was told I could go only when they said. And I was afraid. Afraid if I left, the boy would suffer. What happened next? Her voice grew smaller. One day I woke up and the boy was gone. They said he had been adopted. I was told to leave. Did you file a complaint? She laughed. Not cruelly, but like someone who had stopped expecting kindness. I was a woman with no name, no money. Who would listen? The officer leaned forward. But this child, we believe it was the same boy dropped off at the shelter weeks later. Do you know who left him there? Emma shook her head. No, but I think maybe someone had a change of heart. The officer nodded. Double quotes one last question. Do you believe the man sitting outside that window is the same child? She looked toward the glass. Sundar flinched. It was as if she could see right through. I don't believe, she said quietly. I know. The officer turned off the recorder. Sundar leaned back, his hand shaking. Outside. The sky was overcast. It had begun to rain lightly. The kind of rain that felt soft but carried a weight. Later, as he sat across from the lead investigator in a private room, the man pushed a folder across the table. Mr. Pichai, we believe there was a criminal ring in the 1980s that trafficked children. Many were passed off as adoptions. Your nanny may have been one of the few who tried to protect one. So you believe her? Sundar asked. The man exhaled. I believe her story matches others we've started to uncover. But there's something else. He opened the folder. Inside was a page with a name Sundar had never seen. This woman was listed as the one who dropped the child at the shelter. A black and white photo stared up at him. A young woman with sunken eyes and a scar across her cheek. Who is she? Sundar asked. Her name was Meena. She worked as a domestic help for the family that supposedly took Kamala in. She vanished soon after dropping the child. Do you know where she is now? The officer nodded. We found her. She lives in a village 2 hours from here, under a different name. I want to meet her. She's agreed. The drive was long, winding through narrow roads and half-flooded lanes. The village was quiet, as if time had forgotten it. Goats bleated in the distance. A few children played with sticks near a broken well. They reached a small hut with a tin roof. A woman in her late 70s sat outside, peeling vegetables. She looked up as they approached. Her eyes changed when she saw Amma. Kamala. She whispered, "You're alive." Amma said nothing. She just stepped forward and embraced her dot inside. They sat on the floor, the room dimly lit by a kerosene lamp. Sundar sat beside them, the weight of the moment pressing into his chest. Why? Did you drop me at the shelter? He asked quietly, and I looked at him with watery eyes. Because I couldn't keep you. I worked for a family that took babies in, but not legally. When they grew tired of one, they told me to take him away. They said no one would care. Was I bought? Mina nodded slowly. You were brought in. I don't know from where. But the woman, the mistress, she said you had no family, no name. Alma trembled beside him, and then they told me my child had died. But they brought this baby instead. Mina reached for her hand. They lied. I think they switched the children. Sundar felt the floor shift beneath him. So you think I am her child? Mina looked at them both. I don't know. But I believe you were both victims of the same lie. Outside, thunder rumbled. Sundar stepped out, walked into the rain. It poured now. Heavy, relentless. Everything he knew. Everything he built his identity on was dissolving in front of him. He wasn't sure what scared him more, being someone else entirely, or never knowing for sure. Emma stood beside him minutes later. I'm sorry, she said. For what? For not knowing, for not protecting you from the truth. He turned to her, tears mixing with the rain. You did more than protect me. You gave me a life. She reached for his hand. I would do it all again. Just then, his phone buzzed once more. A message. But this time, not from an unknown number. It was from his assistant. Sir, we found something in your adoption file. Urgent. You need to come back. Sundar looked at a storm had begun, but something told him. The real thunder was yet to come. The secret in the envelopeth plane landed with a soft jolt as the wheels kissed the tarmac. Sundar looked out the window at the cloudy skies of Bangalore, his heart far heavier than when he left. Beside him, Amma slept quietly, her head gently resting against the side of the seat. Even in his sleep, there was tension in her face. The past few days had aged her more than the last 10 years combined. But even now, she carried herself with quiet strength, the strength of someone who had faced storms and kept walking. They were met at the terminal by Sundar's assistant, Rima, who handed him a sealed envelope the moment they stepped into the private lounge. We traced the origin of your adoption file. Sir, she said quietly, her voice low and hesitant. This was hidden inside a confidential section. It was only accessible with legal clearance. Sundar took the envelope, his fingers trembling slightly as he peeled the flap open. The air in the room seemed to grow thinner with each second. Alma stood beside him, silent, her eyes locked on his face. Inside the envelope were 3 things. The first was a photograph. It was old, yellowed with age. In it, a woman held a baby in her arms. The woman was not Amma. She looked younger, well-dressed, and visibly frightened. The baby had the same wide eyes and soft curls as Sundar had seen in all his childhood photos. The second was a letter. Handwritten, faded. The ink was smudged in places. But the words were still legible. He read aloud. To whoever finds him, please forgive me. My name is Anjali. I am not strong. I cannot raise him. But he deserves a better life. Please, protect him. His name is Arjun. Sundar blinked. Arjun. His breath caught in his throat. He had never heard that name before. Never once. It sounded foreign and familiar all at once. The third item was a legal note, a copy of a report. From 1984. It was brief. Baby male, approximately 3 months old. Found abandoned outside Shraddha shelter, Delhi. Note attached. Unidentified woman seen fleeing the scene. No identification. Child taken in by shelter staff. Listed as unknown. Infant number 17. Case closed. Sundar lowered the papers. The silence was loud. Arjun, he whispered. My name was Arjun. Amma looked at the letter. Then at him, I didn't know, she said. I swear to you. I only knew you as the child they left behind. I gave you the name Sundar because you were the most beautiful gift I'd ever been given. He turned to her, his voice breaking. But you knew I wasn't yours. She nodded slowly. I knew. But I also knew you were alone. And afraid. And unloved. And I couldn't leave you. He sat down heavily, the papers still trembling in his hands. I've lived my whole life not knowing where I came from, he said. I thought you were my family. Then I thought maybe you weren't. Now I don't even know if I was stolen, or simply left behind. You weren't stolen, Amma said, kneeling in front of him. You were saved. But why didn't she keep me? He asked. Anjali, my mother, why did she leave me? Amma looked away. Maybe she was scared. Maybe she was threatened. Maybe she thought she was protecting you. A mother's love doesn't always come wrapped in comfort. Sometimes it comes in sacrifice. His mind raced. For a moment, he imagined a young woman running through the night, holding a baby in shaking arms, kissing his forehead one last time before placing him in a basket at the door of a shelter. Was it cowardice or courage? He didn't know now. She was gone, or at least out of reach. No one knew where Anjali was. No full name, no address. Just a memory written in faded ink. That night, Sundar couldn't sleep. He walked into the garden outside his house, the moonlight casting silver. Shadows across the grass. Amma sat on a bench, wrapped in a shawl, staring at the sky. Can I ask you something? He said quietly. She nodded. If you could go back to that day, to the moment they handed me to you, would you still take me? She turned to him, her eyes full of tears. I would carry you in my arms again, even if it broke me. Even if it meant losing everything else, I would choose you again. And again, he sat beside her. Then maybe that's enough. She smiled faintly. Do you hate her? She asked. Your real mother? He thought for a long moment. No, he said. I don't understand her. Not yet, but if she gave me up to keep me safe, then she gave me something more powerful than any bloodline. They sat in silence. But just before dawn, something unexpected happened. An anonymous email came through to Sundar's personal inbox. It had no subject, only one sentence. The woman you seek lives in Chennai, under the name Anjali Rue. She runs a small tea stall near the old bus stand. Attached was a recent photo. Sundar opened it with trembling hands. There she was, older now, thinner, her eyes sunken. Her hair gray and tied back in a simple knot. But the eyes, they were unmistakable. He looked into those eyes and felt a strange pain stir in his chest. Not anger, not joy, just a quiet, aching need to understand. He turned to him. Come with me. Are you sure? I have to know. The next morning, they flew to Chennai. The heat was dry and unrelenting. The streets buzzed with noise and motion. As they walked toward the bus stand, Sundar's heart pounded louder with each step. They found the tea stall easily, a small shack with a tin roof, a wooden bench, and a boiling kettle on a coal stove. The woman behind the counter looked up. She froze. Sundar stepped forward. Are you Anjali Rue? She didn't speak. Her hands dropped. The cup she was holding. Tea spilled across the floor. Then she whispered, Arjun? He nodded. And the world stopped moving. The face of forgiveness. The silence between them was unlike any silence Sundar had ever known. It wasn't empty. It wasn't cold. It was full, overflowing with unsaid things, with time lost, and with the heaviness of two lives torn apart by choices neither of them fully understood. Anjali stood behind her tea stall, like a statue made of breath and bone. She was trembling, yet her eyes didn't blink. Sundar stood just a few steps away, his body frozen, but his soul racing. He didn't know what to say. How? Do you speak to a ghost who lived in your blood? How do you stand in front of the woman who gave you life and then vanished without a trace? What words could contain the years of longing, the confusion, the moments when he had wondered who he really was? Behind him, Amma stood quietly, her presence grounding him. She didn't speak. She knew this moment wasn't hers. It belonged to a mother and a son separated not by miles, but by silence and faith. Anjali finally stepped out from behind the stall. Her movements were slow, as if she was afraid that if she walked too fast, the moment would shatter. I thought I would never see you again, she said, in a voice that sounded like a song faded by time. Sundar took a step forward. Why did you leave me? His voice was quiet, not accusing, but aching. She looked down. Her hands were rough, her fingernails stained with tea. She had lived a hard life, and it showed in the way she stood, slightly bent, slightly afraid. I was 17, she said, and pregnant by a man who promised marriage but disappeared. My family disowned me. They said I brought shame. They tried to make me get rid of you before you were even born. But I ran away. I hid. I gave birth in a temple with no doctors, no nurses, just the wind and God watching. She looked up now. Her eyes glistened with tears. For 3 months, I kept you with me, but I was starving. I had nothing. I sold my bangles to buy milk. I begged on trains. You were always crying from hunger, and one night, you stopped breathing for a moment. I thought I had killed you by keeping you. That's when I knew I couldn't be your mother and save you at the same time. Her voice cracked. So I made the only choice I had. I kissed your forehead and prayed someone better would find you. Someone with a home. Someone who would give you more than I ever could. Tears rolled down her cheeks, and every day after that I hated myself. But I hoped maybe you had lived. Sundar listened, his chest rising and falling with slow, deep breaths. He didn't know how to respond. His heart wanted to scream, to cry, to run to her and ask for more stories, more memories. But his mind was still trying to catch up with the weight of her words. I lived, he finally said. Because someone found me. He turned to Emma. She found me. Anjali looked at Emma for the first time, and something in her broke. She stepped forward and fell to her knees. Thank you, she whispered. You raised him. You gave him a life. I am nothing compared to you. Amma knelt too, gently lifting Anjali's face with trembling hands. You are his mother, she said softly. I just filled in where the world failed you. The three of them stayed like that for a long time, 3 broken hearts, connected by something far more powerful than truth. Loved out later, they sat together on a wooden bench near the stall. The sun had begun to set, painting the sky in shades of gold and fire. Sundar handed Anjali a bottle of water, and she smiled through her tears. I watched your videos, she said. Someone showed me on their phone. I didn't know it was you at first, but your eyes, I recognized them. Why didn't you come forward? Because I was afraid. I thought you might hate me. I didn't know you, he said. But I think a part of me always missed you. She reached into a small cloth bag beside her and pulled out a torn piece of cloth. It was old, almost falling apart. This was your blanket. From the temple, she said. I kept it all these years. He took it gently, holding it like it was made of gold. In that moment, something shifted in him for so long. He had lived with ambition and precision, building futures, leading teams, changing the world. But this moment, simple, painful, human, felt like the most important thing he had ever done. I want to help you, he said. Both of you. No more working. No more struggling. You've given too much already. Anjali shook her head. I don't want your money. It's not money, he said. It's dignity. It's safety. It's family. She looked at him, eyes wide with emotion. I don't know how to live in a world where I'm not apologizing. Then let's build one where you don't have to. They stayed in Chennai for a week. Sundar made arrangements. He found an apartment for Anjali in a quiet neighborhood. Amma moved in with her. They weren't sisters. They weren't friends. They were something else, 2 women, bound by the same boy, learning to forgive each other through shared care. Sundar visited. Every few months. He brought groceries, books, sometimes just stories. He watched as the 2 women laughed together over tea, scolded him for forgetting to eat, and sat quietly watching old movies in a small living room that smelled of sandalwood and love. 1. Years later, Emma fell ill. It was sudden. A peaceful evening turned into a hospital room. Quiet and bright, Sundar sat beside her, holding her hand. Her breathing was slow. Her eyes were half closed. But when she saw him, she smiled. You grew up so well, she whispered. Because of you. She reached into the drawer beside her bed and pulled out a small notebook. Sundar opened it. Inside were drawings, notes, and photos. Every birthday, every smile, every tear. She had kept them all. I wanted to remember. Every moment, she said. He leaned forward, tears rolling down his face. You gave me more than life. You gave me home. You were always my son, she whispered. Even if not by blood, by love. She passed away that night. Peacefully with his hand in hers. The funeral was small, dignified. Sundar gave a short eulogy. No cameras. No reporters. Just people who knew her heart. Njal. I stood beside him, her arm gently resting on his. She saved both of us, she said. Yes, Sundar replied. And now, it's our turn to honor her. He built a foundation in her name, the Amma Trust. A place for abandoned children and forgotten mothers, where no one would ever again have to beg to be seen, where love would be the only language. Years passed. One day, as he stood on stage at a global summit, delivering a speech on ethics and humanity and technology, Sundar looked out at the crowd and saw a woman holding a child on her hip. He smiled, because he knew that somewhere in that child's future, kindness had already been planted, and somewhere deep within him, the boy once left behind was finally home.